Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. And this is our Win Your Monday. This is a show that I wanted to create to help retailers, retail leaders kind of own their Monday. But what I realized in my career was that it actually starts on a Sunday. And so we are here tonight to connect with you. We have a nice, quick kind of agenda of things that we want to talk to you tonight about. I'm excited to uh, present whatever it is that we have to talk about tonight, and I'm going to get to that here in a second. Um, One of the things that I do know is that as I speak to more and more people who are actually out here in the retail world, retail leaders, um, they're struggling a little bit. They're struggling as it relates to kind of where they are within their career, the industry. There are certain things that are probably taking place within the industry that they're kind of cause some angst within them. And so tonight, I probably won't do a good job of reducing that angst for the topic that we actually have that we're going to be talking about tonight. So here's kind of what we've come up with for this show, and I wanted to make sure that this show actually impacts you, that it actually has something that you can actually take with you. And so, one of the things that I have learned kind of throughout my career is I would almost take a concept or an idea, and I would kind of fixate on that as a leader, and I would take that idea and I would kind of move it forward, whether it was for myself or it was for my team. And I would always give them almost kind of like a word of the week, or it was kind of like our focus of the week. So I was thinking about that the other day. I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to kind of do that for you, and I'm going to give you as a retailer a word for the week, something that you can really think about as you go into next week, a word that you probably haven't thought about in a while, and more importantly, how do you kind of implement this into your everyday leadership? And then the next thing is one thing, right? So we give you one thing to know, one thing to ask, and then one thing to do. And then I would be remiss if I did not talk about the financial impact of that one thing, relative to your business unit, your region, your market, and then also to you as a leader, and then to you as your team as well. But before we move into that, um, if you have any questions over there on LinkedIn, all my people over on LinkedIn, good to see you there. You guys can connect with us, of course, at Worthy Retail U. If you have any questions, make sure you connect with us. We are also at Worthy Retail U for our Facebook group. It's actually a pretty dynamic group. It's been going pretty well over there in the excitement. And then we are also on YouTube at Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. I should have put on actually at Steve Worthy, but retail leadership, we're everything, everywhere. And then I also just wanted to make sure that I put this on here too around our podcast. So our podcast is Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. We really want you to connect with us. So you'll see this the QR code kind of throughout tonight. If you want to make sure you take out your phone and connect with us for our podcast. And I didn't put the stats up here today, but I'll put them up next week. Our podcast has been doing extremely well. We started it a few years ago, and it's been doing extremely well. So thank you for all the listeners who have been out there listening, and not just downloading it, but actually listening to it. And we've been able to look at the information to understand how much of our podcast you are listening to. And I got to tell you that we are in a significant number as it relates to consumption, or what the industry is going to be talking about listening time. It's like, how long do you actually listen to the actual podcast? Because a download is kind of what we call aspirational, acquired knowledge, meaning that the download is there, but people actually haven't even listened to it. We deal with consumption, and so we want to make sure that the content that we actually give you, that you're going to listen to through the entirety of the actual podcast. The other thing I want to thank everybody. We had a good crowd on Thursday night. We did one of our first live podcasts on Thursday. We're going to be doing that every Thursday different topic. Last week, we actually talked about how to get hired in retail, how to get promoted in retail. And I walked through the 3 things that will prevent you from getting promoted. And next week, part 2, we are going to be talking about the 3 things that will help you get promoted in retail. So we're going to be doing that every Thursday night at 7 p.m. So make sure that you connect with us there as well, too. All right. All right. So let's go there. Excellent. So if you have any questions tonight, as you are watching and listening tonight, I would definitely ask you to go ahead and put them in the comments, and so that we can actually get some dialogue started. And if there's something that has been pressing on your mind that may not have to deal with what we may be talking about today, make sure you go ahead and put that in there as well too. All right. So let's go ahead. Let's do our word of the week. Our word of the week: patience. Patience, patience, patience. This is a word that, for me as a retail leader, was very hard to actually. I'm gonna actually add myself in here on this one too. So I can do this on live. This isn't our actual podcast, so I can go ahead and do some stuff live here too if I wanted to, just to make sure that you guys see me. Here we go. I can do that live. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. Because I want you to see this picture, and I want you to see myself here in a little bit too. All right, excellent. All right, so patience, and I specifically brought this. I like this picture of patience as a puzzle actually fitting into the totality of a puzzle. It's a piece that actually fits into the totality of it. And I firmly believe that patience as a leader, especially as a retail leader, as fast moving, as fast paced as the things that we actually do, you have to have patience. You have to think about the words that you say, the things that you think about, the conversations that you have, the results that you actually want to you want to generate. And a lot of times those conversations, to see the results, actually take time. They take patience, and they take patience in your conversation with your team. So the importance of patience, and I wanted to do this before we move into our one thing. It's because you need to build trust, and you need to build respect. The one thing that a lot of people in retail, a lot of people that I guess are under different leaders, the one thing that they really want from their leaders is a listening ear. And I call it, actually, I talk about it in this context around approachability. It is one of the leadership traits, and actually, I'm glad it really just came to my mind. I'm going to write it down. I'm actually going to do an episode on there. I've been meaning to do one on it. I think approachability is one of the number one leadership attributes that no one talks about, but it is one of the number one things that you need. And when it comes to approachability and patience, the approachability side of it, you take the time to listen. You take the time to be curious. You take the time to build rapport, right? So that requires patience. And the approachability side of it, it's almost like I can't really say it because I don't have any hair, but it's almost like letting your hair down and connecting with people on a one-on-one basis or from a group standpoint. The worst thing that you can do is that when you walk into a market, you can make them feel like you don't have any patience for their visit or for their store. I have been guilty of it. I have come into a market, and I have been very fast with my visits, my conversation, and the results, and then looking to see what I wanted to see or what I thought I wanted to see, and then I will move on. One of the worst things I could ever do. One of the worst things you could ever do, because that team has actually taken the time to get that store the way that it should be for that visit. And so it's incumbent upon you to take that time and have patience so that you can actually get out of that visit and actually put into that visit what other people may want. The other important aspect of patience is encouraging creativity and innovation. The more you are able to be patient, first and foremost, kind of with yourself, and take the time to learn and educate yourself on different industry uh, best practices, competition, what's taking place, also your own personal leadership development, and taking the time to understand the things that you need to learn and having the patience. The one thing that I see all the time is that everybody's so excited to move to the next level. They want to move to the next level, and I understand it, right? Because we actually spoke about it on Thursday. We talk about it from the 3F standpoint. You're focused in on your family, your future, and your finances. Those are the three things that you really are focused in on, and I can understand why. But the patience required for you to actually move to the next level and to uh, generate the leadership prowess that you need, it takes some time. And so understanding that the patience aspect of your leadership, you need to understand that. And then driving sustainable change. So as fast as we are in retail, as fast as so many things take place, there is an idea that you need to have around change within the retail world. So if you are taking over a new market, if you have a new boss, if you have high turnover, right? There are issues that are underpinning some of these circumstances that you need to have the patience to uncover, or else you're actually going to continue down the same road. The one thing that we see a lot is around the inability to take the time to be introspective. I look at it in this context. We can always walk into a store. We can always walk into a store, have a conversation with somebody, and we can almost immediately see what's wrong. Almost immediately, right? Or we don't have an issue spotting what's wrong and then trying to implement those things that we need in order to fix it. One of the things that always threw my team off anytime after a visit, and it was a really good visit, I would often say, "So, what did you do right? Right? Well, why was this visit successful?" And it wasn't so much just that they actually had their T's crossed and their I's dotted, right? Listen to me, anybody can make a store look good, especially if they have like 24 hours, right? You can always make your store look good. I always looked at the store and my market from a systemic issue standpoint. As a retail leader, you need to look at your stores from a systemic issue standpoint. It's not about the front of the store where all you got to do is take pallets down and then put it up to the front and make it look nice. You can tell there if a store is systemically good or if a store is systemically bad. And so, in order for you to actually have the change that you need, that you want to have, you have to dig a little deeper. You have to understand kind of the why behind people, how people think. If there's somebody that's sabotaging the situation, there is, and that's another episode that we can talk about down the line. Um, or are you focused in on the wrong things? So there's so many things that you know, we can dive into as it relates to patience. But I wanted to I wanted to give you this word, for today, so that way you have something to think about as you move into Monday. Maybe you haven't been the most patient person. Maybe you need to take the time to have that long awaited conversation with somebody that has been, coming by your office knocking, and they're coming by your office, and you close the door. Or somebody's been calling you and texting you to ask you to come to their market, and you haven't gone to their market. So approach this week a little bit differently. Think about it from a patience standpoint and have patience with yourself and also with your team. All right? Cool. So before we move into the one thing, I want to make sure we say hello to everybody that's out there. Got a few people. Hello, shit's fancy. Yes. Yeah, you like that new the the new little word of the day, right? That's actually pretty cool. No, pretty cool. I appreciate that. What's going on, Walt? How you doing? Good evening, sir. Good evening to you, man. Good evening to you. Oh, there we go. And Walt says, let me make sure I got to get this right. I totally agree with you on the point of patience. I experienced that so much in my days as a manager at Staples. Upper management would visit our stores 100%, 100%, and they would visit. And I would, hey, what's going on, Shanice? How are you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you here. And they would visit your store, and you go a little deeper with that. Walter, was it the fact that they didn't have the patience, that was necessary, or was it, from a visit standpoint, how did that go? Because there's probably somebody in the audience that's definitely probably dealing with, something very similar that you have gone through as well too. All right, so we're gonna move into the one thing to know. One thing, but the one thing to know tonight. All right. So know one thing. And here's the one thing that I want you guys to know. And what I do with what I will be doing. And here's what I'm going to ask you to help me with this too. If there is an article, or if there is something in the retail sphere that you see out there, drop me a DM, put it in, send me a message on LinkedIn, or even put it in, the comments on this one. What I typically do is I take, there are so many different headlines that are out there from a retail standpoint. My thought is to take one of the bigger headlines that's out there in the retail world, and we are going to take it and talk about it as it relates to know one thing, ask one thing, and then do one thing. Think that is one of the best ways to kind of gear you up, not for Monday on a Sunday night, by taking a headline that's probably out there in the news. It's also something that you probably want to maybe have a conversation with your boss about, on Monday, or your peers, or whatever it is. That was my thought process. Because typically, you have your Monday morning or Monday afternoon, sometimes on Tuesday, kind of like district or regional calls. So make sure that you kind of come loaded for bear with something that is relevant to the retail industry. And tonight's know one thing is extremely relevant, and it is from this research company. It's called Checker, and I got it off of a retail newsletter, or a Retail Wire. And it says that 74% of retail workers were surveyed, telling us, which is Checker, that they are either already searching for a new job or thinking about it for 2023. So when I saw that number 74, being somebody who was in retail for quite a long time, I thought that number was low. And here's why I say that number is low, is because every year, every retail company has these surveys, and these are surveys, and these are pointed questions around pay, their experience, the company, where do you see yourself, how does the corporate statements align with you, does the mission and vision align with you, do you think that we're doing a really good job with the mission and vision statement, how is your boss treating you, how are your peers, what's one thing that you would change, all of these different questions. And sometimes when when I used to look at some of the information, the interesting thing was that the numbers will be low in certain areas. And then what I would do was that I would visit those markets, and I would talk to the team about some of those results. And dare I say that the number of people around, let's say pay and benefits. Well, pay and benefits isn't a really good example, because it always sucks. Doesn't matter what company and how much they're paying you in retail. I'm just gonna put it out there to you. It doesn't matter. Even when we gave more people money, it was always something that was on the survey that always scored low. One of the things when it comes to, how does your boss treat you, and it would be kind of low. And then I would go into some of these markets and and I walk in a store and I'll have a session with them and whew, man, you know, it would get pretty crazy. And so you take experiences like that and multiply them by, you know, all the different years I've had. Uh, I, I think the number is a little low, and I think it's important. But I think it's important for people to understand that your team is out there looking, that your team is out there thinking about, should I stay or should I go? Should I stay or should I go? You see, you see the sweatshirt that I have on, and you see the little logo thing behind me. And we talking about make a move, and we are in the throes of what we have entitled and what we call make a move season. And so I am not surprised by this number. I have talked about this number, you know, since the beginning of the year, and we've been talking about make a move, where you typically get your corporate talking points and direction at the beginning of the year. You end up getting all of your financial information of how you did as a company, as a market, as an individual store. Even if you break it down as a manager within a store, within a certain within a certain department, you received all of your information there as well. The last thing is that you typically get your personal performance reviews at this time of the year, and or you may have received them. This is mid-April, so you probably received them because you know, you get bonuses and all that other stuff depending on the company and their fiscal year. But at this time of year, everybody's thinking about it, good, bad, or indifferent, right? They're either thinking about what we call make a move up, on, or out, and they are thinking about it. And this stat actually proves what we've been talking about. And so you, as a retail leader, as a group leader, senior vice president, regional, district manager, even a store manager, you have to understand that they are thinking about it. And then why is this so important for you to understand this on Monday? Because you need to start having conversations with people. I'm going to actually talk about that here in a second. If you're out here in the audience and you're listening, you hear this number, you know, let me know what are your thoughts. Do you think this number is low? And also, why do you think this number? Why do you think people are thinking about leaving retail or leaving maybe their company or that position? I would really, like to know your own perspective, on this as well too. All right, cool. And Walter has answered the question. Oh, the visits were more focused on making the store look good, but less time was spent with the team. Yeah. The store, one of the things that we often talked about, let me put this on, that I often spoke about. I'm in town, put my light on. I got it now. Now I'm really fancy from Cher's standpoint. I put the nice light on in the back. Was that a good looking store was just part of what we did, right? That's what it should be. It should just be part of what you do. Just like payroll, right? Payroll is I don't look at it from a wage standpoint. Payroll for me is productivity, right? It's all around productivity. The more payroll I feel that you have spent in certain situations means in certain situations you are less productive, right? And I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive. And what I mean by that is that typically in most markets, stores, or whatever it may be, you will have one person who can actually do the job of two people because they've been there for so long. They're seasoned, they understand. And when we start to overspend in payroll, we start to get into unproductive habits. We start to possibly start to just focus in on a really good looking store and not some of the systemic issues that occur. Now, I'm not saying that's the norm or the situation for everybody, but in my experience, those are the different things that I've actually been able to see, and I think about from a productivity standpoint, how can you be more productive? The best way to be more productive is with your team, is making sure that you have the right people on your team. And I know that's a hard part for a lot of companies and a lot of stores, but it is possible. And so when we start to think about what Walter's talking about, the actual store visit piece, you have to think about it in the context of making sure that a good looking store is something that just should be part and parcel with what you do. All right, so we talked about the one thing to know, which is 74% of retailers, retail workers are thinking about leaving. So, what's one thing as a retail leader? Ask one thing, and I here's the as I do these Sunday evenings, these when your Mondays on Sunday. Um, well, I like that actually. That just rhymed. When your Mondays on Sundays, of course it should, because it's a day of the week. Um, I always over prepare, and even though I say one thing, when I say ask one thing, I'm going to probably give you a couple of things to ask, and also a couple of things to do, and they're going to be really simple. So I'm going to try to keep them simple so that you can actually implement some of the things that I'll actually put out there. So the one thing to ask is why. I know it's a basic question that you people should ask, but it's so true. It is a very simple question, but you can ask people. I mean, listen, one of the things we spoke about on Thursday night, one of the things that will prevent people from actually getting promoted was the lack of strategic communication. And part of that lack of strategic communication is curiosity, or the lack of curiosity, right? As a leader, it's important for you to remain curious. It's important for you to be inquisitive and open and honest about why you're asking something. And if you don't know the answer, that's okay. That's actually the best part. Can I say this too? Okay, I'm going to say this real quick, and this may sound um, wrong, but it's the truth. One of the best things I found about being in my leadership roles was that a lot of times I didn't have to know everything, right? A lot of times I could ask the questions that so many other people before me or even above me wanted to ask. One, because I had the role, right? Okay, understand that I was already in the role, and we were having measures of success. So, dude, I just took it upon myself to just be like, dude, I want to know why X, Y, and Z. How come this isn't working from corporate? What can we do differently over here? Oh my gosh, you really want to know? Yes, I want to know. Why is this person still on your team? Right? Uh, just asking, why is the competition beating us? Do you really want to know, Steve? Yeah, well, they have better product assortment. Why do they have better product assortment? Well, the buyers look at the market differently than our buyers. Well, why do they look at the market differently? It's almost like that whole 5 why thing, right? To kind of drill down, and it's not a negative thing. Just asking why helps you with your understanding. So you should ask your team why in a meeting. Hey, dude, I just saw this stat. And they said that 74% of you guys and people around here and the people in the industry maybe are thinking about leaving. I'm not asking you to tell me if you are one of them, but I just really want to know what do you think? Why do you think this is? And what can be done differently? Let me tell you what, you may not like the answers, but you will gain a different level of respect when you ask a question that you really want to know the answer to. So, why are 74% of retail leaders leaving? Understand that. The other, ask one thing. What can you do as a leader? And I kind of answered that one already, but I think it could go a little deeper. Like, what can you do as a leader? What is one thing that you can do differently? Ask your team. Here's this is a loaded question, especially if you have high turnover. Um, and a lot of times you may not like the answer with this one too. What can I do differently as a leader, or what can we do differently as a team to make more people stay? Or why are people leaving? This is also a question that you could probably ask yourself. Okay, ask this question for yourself. Why are people leaving you? And then the other flip side of that, why are people staying? Why are people staying? Is it the finances? Is it because they see a future? Or is it just because they got the family that they got to take care of? Or is it because of you? Is it because they like you? Because they like working for you? They like the vision and direction that you currently have, for the store, for the market, all these different things. So make sure you can understand that, and you're actually asking questions. All right. So before we get to the one thing to do and then and a revenue piece, I want to make sure I put I'm sure what's going on, my man Chris Stone. How are you doing, man? Good to see you. Yeah, stay curious is the key. You got to stay curious. Got to stay curious. What's going on, Shannon? How are you doing? Elevate, educate, and have the team member invest into their business. Then recognize the wins, move through the opportunities, so they're not a repeat. Come on now. But as a leader, invest in the well-being of your team. Then recognize the wins, move through the opportunities so that they're not a repeat. So you're all in my wheelhouse, Shannon. That whole thing about repeat opportunities, within the store. I'm gonna stay focused. I'm gonna stay focused. I'm gonna save that for an actual podcast episode. But man, one of the worst things you can have on any visit is our repeat, what we call repeat notes, right? Dude, I just talked to you about that a month ago, right? Or we just spoke on a call, the entire market, and we said that we were gonna go after this one thing, and you haven't gone after it. Like, so if you have a market of 12 stores or four districts, and three of the districts are going after, the other district is going after, like, what's the holdup? It's been a month and everybody else has gone after it and you haven't gone after it. Right. So that's a completely different conversation. But that's when you that's when you get to this point of asking why. Why haven't you gone after it? What can I do differently as a leader to lead you differently? Or what do you need to do differently as well? All right. So we spoke a little bit earlier about this whole make a move thing. And I have a passion, as you can tell, for leadership, and also more importantly retail leaders. My goal is to help them understand more about themselves so that they can move into the career and move into the leadership positions that they really truly want to move into. But a lot of times they need a safe space. You are trying to understand a little bit more about yourself, but a lot of times you feel that you can't go to your boss, or you can't go to even your peer, because guess what? Your peer is looking to get promoted too. You need a safe space. We have created that safe space with Worthy Retail U and our Make a Move program, which is really to help you focus in on understanding where you currently sit within your leadership journey and what are the things that you're missing in order for you to move to the next level, or possibly move laterally, or even move out, right? Here's the thing. I have done all three. I have moved up several times within my career, and I have moved laterally in my career, and I've recently moved out, and now doing Worthy Retail U full time. I have done each and every one of the things that I'm talking about. So I have created a safe space for you to be able to come into. Cher always says I need to say I always say we. That's the old leader in me, working with teams. it's me rocking this stuff out, and I am here for you to connect with you and to create it. I have created a safe space for you to kind of let your hair down and kind of understand a little bit more about who you are so that you can be successful as you go along your leadership journey. All right, cool. Let me know if you have any questions, any thoughts, any concerns, anything that you may want to talk about, because we are going to be moving on to one thing to do and then also to the revenue side. All right, this is live, so I can do that. I can drink a little thing of water. All right. So do one thing. Let me recap. We did know one thing, and we spoke about the 74% of retail workers are thinking about moving, making a move. We asked one thing, and that was around asking why and what can you do as a leader. Just a little quick recap. So now, do one thing. Do one thing. And like I told you, I'm sorry. I always I gotta give you more. I always got to give you more, man, because every time I say put one thing out there, another one pops in my head, and then I'm like, okay, we're good. And another one pops in my head. So all these things just kind of popped in my head, right? All right. Here's the thing. This was a couple things that you can do with everything that we kind of spoke about tonight, and think about this on on Monday, Tuesday. When your next visit with your boss, you go to lunch or you take your somebody, a high potential person, to lunch. Check in with your team. Check in with your team. So we spoke about 74% of people, retail workers, are thinking about leaving. Check in with your team. You have to check in with your team. You don't know where they are. You don't know. You don't know until you ask. And you have to ask. You have to be able to. Let me back up when I say have to ask and check in with your team. I'm going to go back into that phrase that I spoke about around approachability. When you have a high level of approachability with your team, they will tell you things that they didn't tell their previous boss. They will tell you things that they have probably not told anybody else. That's because they trust you. That's because you have been able to build up a rapport with them. That doesn't necessarily mean you have solved all the problems. Here's the one issue that we have when you the reason why people don't ask a question, here, when Walter talked about his visit, and he talked about they were so focused in on the store and they didn't talk about the team. A lot of times when the visitors are so afraid to ask a question of, what's going on wrong, or how can I help you, right? They're so afraid because they think they're going to get bombarded with all of these different requests. And here's the thing, sometimes you will, but you always have to manage expectations with that, with your team. Hey, I appreciate you telling me about this. Appreciate you telling me about this planogram, but this planogram's been rolled out to 1,500 stores. I appreciate you, your concern around the lack of payroll, that we've had. I'll see what I can do. And the worst thing that you can do is say, I'll see what I can do, and not see what you can do, and then not communicate what you tried to do to that person. So when you check in with your team, you have to check in it from a that they may bombard you with some stuff that you just can't do anything about, but that's okay. That approachability side of you allows them to do that, and then you can actually either get something done, or you can say, or you can really give it your college try and try to get it done. And hopefully you do that. Second thing, discuss this article with your boss and your peers. Anytime, I started a book club in my market, and we read the book, and then we would talk about the book on a weekly basis. We would just read a chapter here, this chapter, and then we talk about it. It was a part of our meetings. And the team loved it, because I was really just taking the time to connect with them on something completely different than just like the day-to-day stuff. And I wanted to know their perspective on this book around leadership and what they were doing with it for themselves and also for their team. So the same thing when we start talking about articles and things that we talk about here on Sunday night, man, these are really great things to go and talk to your boss or your peers or your team about. Hey, dude, I was just listening to this podcast the other day, and they were talking about that around 74% of our retail workers are thinking about leaving. Like, what are your thoughts around that? What are you doing to have really good retention, right? It's okay to be able to do that. And then the last thing to do, what's the reason the last person left your leadership? So I told you I try my best not to, give you too much. I had probably about 4 or 5 more things for you to do with this one. But as it relates to the article with people leaving, I'm curious as to, you don't have to put it in the chat. You don't have to put it in the comments. I'm curious as to the last person that left your leadership, right? Under your leadership, they left. They've got either you fired them or they left. Ask yourself that question. Could you have done something differently? What did you do? Could they have done something differently? Could you have communicated to them what they could have done differently? Or did you just expect for them to wake up one day and kind of figure it all out? We don't have it all figured out, even the best leaders. And so you can just imagine people underneath you, they probably don't either. And so that's incumbent upon you to connect, which is why it's to check in with your team. It's incumbent upon you to connect with your team so that you can have a better understanding of where they are and where they want to go. It's also important for you to understand where you are, your communication style, your ability to see talent, your ability to develop talent. Not every leader has the ability to develop talent. You can learn it, right? But not every leader has that ability. So last one, what is the reason the last person left you? All right, so as I always said, we want to talk about the financial implications of all of this stuff. Customer experience, training costs, and loss of sales. I would be remiss every week if I didn't tell you that the number of people leaving your stores, your market, is going to impact or potentially impact even, here's the thing, even them looking, not the fact that they even left yet, even them looking for another job or even thinking about it impacts your customer experience, your training costs, and loss of sales, right? Just because they haven't left yet doesn't mean that their mind isn't somewhere else. So the last piece we talked about, which is around do something, right? This is why you do something. This is why you do something. It's because of the impact that what we just spoke about can have on your customer experience, your increased training cost, right? I had I was starting out in retail, and I had an entire store. I was in the cafe industry at the time, and I had an entire store. I won't say the entire store. About 80% of the store was stealing money, and it was a small store. They were all stealing money. Saw it on tape, and we did a whole investigation. They didn't know we were doing an investigation and all this other stuff. So I spoke to my boss and my boss's boss, and I told him, I said, you got to give me like 2 to 3 weeks. And he was like, why? I said, because I'm going to turn over the whole store and I'm going to bring in a whole new team. And so I quickly started to develop, it was probably about 4 or 5 different people. This is a cafe. I was in the cafe industry at the time. It was about 4 or 5 people that I had handpicked that I wanted to go to the store. And I told them, I got a new opportunity for you. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but you need to be ready. And They didn't say anything. They didn't say anything to anybody. They trusted me. They trusted me. I went in on a Sunday, which is probably not the typical day that you're supposed to do it, but I didn't care. Had a meeting after the cafe closed, and fired him. Fired him. Fired him. And on Monday, that cafe had an entirely new team. It impacted customer experience, training costs, loss of sales, all of it. Especially with customer experience, when you have a brand new team, especially in the cafe business. Just imagine you know, those of us who go to Starbucks and we walk into a Starbucks and then we're a regular and they know you and they don't even have to take your order. They just see you walk in and they start your order, right? This was that type of experience. So me letting go the entire team, I had to come in there the very next day because I knew several of the customers. Talked to them. I was out in the parking lot, saw them, talked to them. Hey, this is what you got going on. Da da da. They were like, man, well, thank you for saying this. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this. I mean, I didn't have to do it, but the new manager was in there operating. I had to kind of do damage control, and the store ended up being successful. So if I can ask myself that question of why those people, you know, left or I had to fire them, if I could be very honest with you, they weren't mine. I inherited a lot of people, and I think they felt that since I was a new guy, they can get away with some stuff, but they had chose the wrong guy. So there you go. Little morbid story, but it teaches you that as a leader, sometimes you got to make some bold decisions that a lot of people may not agree with, and you just have to figure out the best cause of or the best course of action in order to fix or rectify that problem. All right. What time is it? Oh man, okay, that's good. I still got well, I'm actually I feel really good because it's not even an hour yet, and I wanted this show to be as long as it needed to be, and it probably won't be an hour, which is cool. So anyway, thank you. I hope this has really helped you tonight. You know, kind of getting you prepared, sort of for your for your Monday. If there is if there is an article, if there is something that you want me to talk about, from a subject matter, next week, please don't hesitate to want to put that into the comments, DM me, and all of that stuff. But I'm excited about this, when your Mondays on Sunday, because I think as we continue to do this, I think the information that I'll be able to present is going to be a lot more, a lot richer, and it's also going to be more impactful. But I think I got a good strategy and good format for the show. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. I have been trying to iterate this over the last probably 4, maybe I don't know, let's just say 2 to 3 months, and trying to iterate this and figure out what I wanted to do. And I think this is the right format to kind of help you with just something really simple, and to get your Monday off, started right on a Sunday. So, all right. And then thank you, Florence, for let me see, for being here and hanging out. I appreciate that. I appreciate that as well. And then love the new format. Excellent. I appreciate that. I think it keeps everything in order. I think one helps me, right? Because this isn't the podcast. This is more of a kind of a teaching, sort of format. Even though I do some teaching in my podcast, this is more of the kind of like, let me take you to school on something that I learned this week that you are definitely going to need as you kind of roll out, for next week. All right. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys so very much. This is Steve Worthy with Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. That sounded super redundant. Apologize for that. I think I like Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy better than I did my first not my first podcast, my second podcast when I got back into it. So I'm excited that Retail Leadership has been doing well. I'll have these stats for you next week, for Retail Leadership, but make sure that you connect with us and go ahead and start following us, on whatever app that you listen to your podcast on. We would love to have you become part of our podcast insiders as well too. So, all right, have a good Sunday. God bless.